It's a feeling that doesn't just sting, it carves itself deep into your soul. It lingers like a shadow, even when the sun shines bright. I know this feeling too well, because once I stood alone against a crowd that chose to believe what was easier, not what was real. Imagine this. You are standing in the middle of a room full of familiar faces, people you've laughed with, trusted, shared your dreams with. Their eyes, once warm, now narrow with suspicion. Their voices, once sweet, now sharp and questioning. You try to speak, but every word you say feels like shouting into a hurricane. No one hears you. No one wants to. The worst part? You aren't fighting enemies. You are fighting people you once loved. At first, I thought it would pass. I thought, they know me. They'll believe me. They have to. But hope turned into a slow, excruciating death when the days dragged into weeks and the whispers only grew louder. I would lie awake at night, replaying every conversation, every moment, wondering where I went wrong. Was I too quiet? Too trusting? Or was the truth simply too uncomfortable for them to accept? Their words circled around me like vultures. She's making it up. She just wants attention. There's no way that's true. It wasn't just disbelief. It was dismissal. It was easier for them to pretend my truth didn't exist than to face the uncomfortable reality that it did. I could feel it, the walls closing in, the ground cracking beneath me. Every glance became a judgment. Every silence a scream. It was like drowning, but no one could see the water filling my lungs. And yet, something inside me refused to break. A flicker, a whisper, a tiny, stubborn light that said, "Hold on. The truth doesn't need approval to exist." I wasn't lying. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. But the battle wasn't just with them. It was within myself. Because when enough people doubt you, a part of you begins to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're right. The human heart isn't made of steel. It's made of fragile threads of trust, love, and hope. And when those threads snap, the pain is indescribable. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to go back to a time when everything made sense. But the truth doesn't vanish because people refuse to see it. It waits, patiently, persistently, powerfully. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the day would come when the truth would rise like the sun after the longest, darkest night. The day would come when the very people who doubted me would be forced to see what they tried so hard to bury. They said I was lying. They laughed behind my back. They turned their faces away when I needed them the most. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because the truth, my truth, was alive. It had breath. It had power. And soon it would roar. If you had met me before all of this, before the accusations, before the cold shoulders and silent treatments, you would have seen someone different. You would have seen someone full of laughter, full of dreams that stretched far beyond the horizon. My name is Alina, and once upon a time, I believed that trust was unbreakable, that when you gave someone your loyalty, they would hold it sacred, like a delicate, precious thing. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone's name. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where smiles were exchanged as casually as greetings, and where secrets, once whispered, traveled faster than the wind. My family wasn't rich, but we were close. My parents taught me to believe in honesty, to always stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I carried those lessons with me like armor. But even armor can crack when the blows come from those you least expect. There was Maya, my best friend since the first grade. We had spent countless nights dreaming about our futures, promising that no matter what happened, we would always have each other's backs. And there was Daniel, the boy with the soft brown eyes and the crooked smile that could undo any bad day. We weren't officially anything, but our bond was undeniable, magnetic, something that made my heart skip every time he was near. Life was simple, safe, predictable, until it wasn't. It all started with a small incident, a lie told by someone else, a rumor born out of jealousy or fear. Someone said I had betrayed Maya. Someone claimed I had spread secrets that weren't mine to tell. At first, I laughed it off, believing that the truth would speak louder than any rumor. But in small towns, whispers can become roars almost overnight. I never even got the chance to defend myself properly. By the time the second and third versions of the story circulated, it didn't matter what I said. The image of me, the liar, the betrayer, was already painted in their minds. The betrayal didn't come from strangers. It came from people I had trusted with the deepest parts of my heart. I remember the first time Maya looked at me and didn't smile. I remember the way Daniel hesitated before returning my wave, how his eyes, once filled with warmth, now held a glimmer of doubt. It broke something inside me. Not all at once, like a tree struck by lightning, but slowly, agonizingly, like a stone eroding under a relentless river. I tried to remind them of who I was. I tried to remind myself. There were moments late at night when I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering, "You know me. You know I would never do this." But knowing and believing are two different things. Sometimes, fear is easier to believe than truth. The saddest part wasn't that they didn't trust me. It was that they didn't even ask. They didn't give me the chance to explain, to show them the truth with the same loyalty I had once shown them. Their silence was louder than any accusation. It said, "We've already decided who you are, and it's not someone worth fighting for." But despite everything, I wasn't completely alone. There was one person, my younger brother, Sam, who refused to believe the lies. He stood by me when no one else would, fierce and unwavering in his belief that truth doesn't need popularity to be real. Sam would sit beside me during those endless evenings, his presence a quiet reminder that not everyone had turned away. "One day," he said once, staring up at the stars, "they're going to realize how wrong they were. And when they do, you won't even need to say a word. Your truth will speak for itself." At the time, it felt like a fantasy. But somewhere deep inside, a small spark reignited. I wasn't just fighting to clear my name. I was fighting to hold on to the parts of myself that the lies were trying to erase. The kindness, the honesty, the belief that truth matters, even when the world turns its back on it. I wasn't just Alina, the accused. I was Alina, the girl who loved too deeply, trusted too easily, and still, somehow, refused to let bitterness take root in her heart. My story wasn't going to end with whispers and betrayal. It was just beginning, because the truth was still mine. And I wasn't done yet. The rumors never stopped. In fact, they grew louder with every passing day. I had hoped, at first, that time would be the great healer. That with every moment that passed, the lies would fade, and truth would rise like the dawn, bright and undeniable. But that wasn't how it worked. Time doesn't heal wounds, it only allows them to fester deeper. It was a Friday afternoon when I ran into Maya at the cafe. The familiar ding of the doorbell as I entered should have brought me comfort. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of quiet chatter, but instead, it felt suffocating. Her back was turned when I walked in, her long, brown hair flowing down her back. I froze. I hadn't seen her in weeks, not outside of the cold exchanges between us at school. It was the first time since everything had unraveled that I felt the rawness of her absence. I took a deep breath and walked over to the counter, ordering my usual, a black coffee, no sugar. But my hands trembled, my heart raced. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her, but I knew I had to. For the sake of the friendship we used to have, for the sake of my own peace. When she finally turned around and saw me standing there, her expression was unreadable. There was a moment, just a split second, when I thought I saw a flicker of something familiar in her eyes, a memory of all the late-night talks, the inside jokes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She didn't say anything at first. Instead, she simply stared at me as if I were a stranger, as if I were someone who didn't deserve to exist in her world anymore. The silence stretched between us, uncomfortable, thick, like an invisible wall. I finally broke the tension. "Maya, we need to talk." Her lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile.
"About what?"
"What's left to talk about, Alina?" she asked, her tone sharp, but her voice wavered. You know what I'm talking about, I said softly. I need you to understand. I didn't do what they said. I never lied to you. Her eyes narrowed, and she took a step back, as though my words were foreign to her. You expect me to believe you now, she said, the words cutting like shards of glass. Do you know how much pain you caused me, Alina? Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was looking at me like I was a fool for trusting you. And you just sit here, asking me to believe you? What do you want me to do, huh? Pretend nothing happened. My heart ached with every word she spoke, but I didn't give up. I refused to let her walk away without hearing me out, without seeing the truth in my eyes. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to see me for who I really am. I didn't spread any lies. I didn't betray you. I never did anything to hurt you. I paused, my throat tight. I know you're hurting, but so am I. The words hung in the air between us. There was no immediate response, only the cold clinking of a spoon against a coffee cup on the nearby table. I could feel the walls closing in again, the hopelessness starting to creep in. But then she spoke. You should have said something sooner, Alina. You should have fought for me earlier. Instead, you let them tear us apart. You let me suffer, and now you expect me to forgive you. Her words hit me harder than anything I had expected. I had fought. I had tried. But it wasn't enough. I knew it wasn't enough. Not when she had already made up her mind, when the doubts had already taken root so deep within her heart. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her see what was right in front of her. But I couldn't. Instead, I took a deep breath, swallowed the rising tide of emotions, and said, I didn't know how to fight for us when no one would listen. A long silence followed. Maya turned away, her shoulders stiff. She took a deep breath and turned back to face me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You left me to believe the lies. I don't know how you can expect me to forget that. In that moment, something inside me shattered. It wasn't her anger that hurt. It wasn't the betrayal. It was the truth that she wasn't sure if she could ever believe in me again, the one person I thought would stand by my side. I stood there, rooted to the spot, knowing that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. It wasn't just Maya I had to convince. It wasn't just Daniel or anyone else who believed the lies. It was the world. It was the people I cared about. The ones who had turned their backs on me. The ones who had never even asked me what had really happened. They had taken sides, and now I had to fight for mine. But the worst part? I wasn't just fighting for my reputation. I wasn't just fighting for the truth. I was fighting for the very essence of who I was. And the more I fought, the more the world seemed to close in. People whispered in halls. They avoided me in the streets. The once familiar places now felt like a foreign land. It was like walking through a nightmare that never ended, a place where I could never get a single moment of peace. Then one day it happened. A message. A simple text. You were right. We were wrong. It came from Daniel, the one person whose opinion had meant more to me than anything. The one person who had believed in me, or at least I thought he had. But the price of proving the truth was steep. Because now, the game had changed. It wasn't just about proving I was innocent. It was about rebuilding everything I had lost. And that would take more than just words. The world had never felt so heavy. With every step I took, the weight of my journey pressed down harder. The lies, the accusations, the betrayal. They were all woven into the fabric of my reality, and there was no way to tear it all apart without losing pieces of myself in the process. The text from Daniel still lingered on my phone, a small glow in the darkness of my thoughts. You were right. We were wrong. I had read it a dozen times, trying to make sense of the simplicity of it all. How could it be so simple after everything that had happened? After everything I had fought for? And yet, there it was, the confirmation I had desperately wanted. But was it enough? Was it too late? I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling as I typed back. What do you mean by this? There was no immediate response. My heart raced in my chest, each passing minute feeling like an eternity. I wondered what had happened, what had made him change his mind. Maybe he had finally seen the truth. Maybe he had spoken to the others who had spread the lies. Or maybe, just maybe, he had realized that he had been wrong to abandon me. The answers were elusive, just like the peace I had longed for. It wasn't until the next day that I got my answer. I walked into the school hallways like I always did, trying to keep my head down, to avoid the stares. But it was impossible. The whispers followed me like a shadow, the cold glances of my classmates, like daggers in my back. It was like everyone was waiting for something that would validate their opinion, something that would make the world around me make sense again. But I wasn't the one who would make sense of it. They would. The final confrontation came during lunch hour. I had avoided it for as long as I could, but there was no escaping it anymore. Daniel was waiting for me at the back of the cafeteria, his posture stiff, his eyes focused on me as I walked towards him. He looked different, as if he had been carrying a burden of his own, something heavy, something regretful. "Alina," he began, his voice quieter than I remembered, filled with an uncertainty that I hadn't expected. "I don't know how to say this, but I owe you an apology. I was one of those people who believed the rumors. I didn't even stop to question them. And for that, I'm sorry. I should have trusted you." I blinked, unsure of how to process his words. The hurt, the anger, the betrayal, they had all built up over time, and now, they all seemed so distant in the face of his confession. "You don't know how much I wanted to believe you, Daniel," I said, my voice shaky. "But you didn't. You just turned your back on me like everyone else. You chose to believe something you never even asked me about." He winced at my words, but his gaze never wavered. "I know. I failed you. I failed us." There it was, the truth. The truth that had been buried under layers of doubt, misunderstandings, and assumptions. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. "It doesn't change anything," I said quietly. "You can apologize all you want, but the damage has been done." I looked away, unable to meet his eyes, even as my heart cried out for some semblance of closure. But then, something unexpected happened. He took a step forward closer, until there was almost no space between us. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of the person I had once known. "I know," he said softly, "and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't deserve your forgiveness." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I forced them back. "Then why are you here?" I whispered, the pain in my chest threatening to overtake me. "Because I want to fix things. Because I want to be the person you thought I was. Because I can't live with myself knowing I hurt you."
I didn't know what to say.
The flood of emotions that surged through me, anger, hurt, relief, sorrow, they were all too overwhelming. "You hurt me, Daniel. You hurt me more than anyone else could." The silence between us hung thick and suffocating. He didn't know what to say, and neither did I. But then, he did something that completely caught me off guard. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. "I've been holding on to this for a long time," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "It's a letter from Maya. I didn't know if you'd ever want to see it, but I think you need to." I took the letter from him, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. The handwriting was familiar, messy, hurried, and yet somehow comforting. I had once read it every day, traced the words like they were a part of me. But now the words felt foreign. Maya's words were distant, as if they belonged to someone else. The letter read, "Alina, I don't know how to fix what's broken between us. I don't know if I even can. But I've been wrong. I've been listening to the wrong people. And I know you never lied to me. I don't know if I can ever make up for how much I hurt you, but I want to try. I want to make things right between us." I stared at the letter, the words blurring in my vision. This was the truth I had been waiting for. The truth I had needed for so long. But was it enough to heal the wounds? Was it enough to rebuild what had been lost? Daniel watched me quietly, his presence offering a strange sense of comfort. "I want to believe this, Alina. I really do." I looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, but something inside me held back. The truth was one thing, but forgiveness? Healing? That would take time. "I'm not sure," I whispered. "I'm not sure I can just forgive everything that easily." He nodded slowly. I know. And I don't expect you to. But I'll be here. Whenever you're ready. As he turned to leave, I sat there for a moment, alone with the letter in my hands. It wasn't over. The journey wasn't finished. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I had hope. Hope that the truth could indeed set things right, even if it wasn't instantaneous. And with that hope, I knew that this wasn't just about proving I was right. It was about rebuilding, step by step, brick by brick.
It would take time.
But I was willing to fight for it. I sat there, holding Maya's letter and Daniel's apology, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The world was still spinning, but something inside me had shifted. The pain wasn't gone, but it was no longer the only thing I could feel. There was a sense of closure in the air, a delicate thread of possibility. The truth, no matter how bitter or sweet, always has the power to change everything. It forces us to confront the past, face the raw, unpolished reality of who we were and who we've become. But it also opens the door to something else, something more powerful than revenge, than anger, than the lies we've been told. It opens the door to healing. It was easy to hold on to the bitterness, to let the pain define me. It was easy to want to prove everyone wrong, to hold on tightly to the belief that they would never understand. But the truth was, I didn't need them to. I didn't need their approval to move forward, to build my life back, piece by piece. I needed myself. I stood up, the weight in my chest slowly lifting, and looked around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. The people who had once doubted me, the whispers that had followed me, they no longer had the power to keep me trapped. It wasn't their forgiveness that I needed. It was mine. What would you do if the truth was all you had left? Would you hold on to your grudges, or would you take a step forward, one small act of courage at a time? Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of the past, letting go of the weight that holds you down. The truth is powerful, but it is only as strong as your willingness to accept it and move forward with it. I realized that the fight had never been about proving anyone wrong. It had been about proving to myself that I was stronger than I ever believed. And as I walked out of that room, I carried with me a quiet strength, knowing that the path ahead, though uncertain, was mine to walk. So, I ask you this. What will you do with the truth that's in front of you? Will you let it change you, or will you keep fighting against it? The choice is yours. But remember, the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving to yourself that you are worthy of the peace that comes with letting go.